They say the storm hits fast. And for 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, the storm isn't coming. It's already raging. The battle between them and NASCAR has blown open into a full-blown meltdown. This isn't just, will they settle? It's, will this change the sport forever?
Yeah, I put all my cards on the table. I think we did a good job of that, and but I'm looking forward to winning the championship this weekend.
It began in a sterile courtroom in Charlotte, as attorneys for 2311, Front Row, and NASCAR walked out of yet another day of mediation with no deal in hand. The hearing was held in the Western District of North Carolina, under Judge Kenneth D. Bell. The parties had hoped mediation might bring resolution. It did not. The tension? It's visible. The frustration? You can hear it. No announced agreement, said the court record. The mediator? Sports legal heavyweight Jeffrey Mishkin, but the judge didn't let them just pick their track. He ordered mediation in his courtroom with Mishkin present. The teams wanted something different. The judge stood firm. Meanwhile, running parallel to the mediation meltdown, the legal trenches dug deeper. 2311 and Front Row argued their market definition aggressively. Because NASCAR has adopted the same relevant market as plaintiffs to support NASCAR's counterclaim, NASCAR cannot reverse course and claim that plaintiffs' market definition is incorrect. The teams insisted in their filing. That's not legal mumbo-jumbo. That's the sound of a challenger saying, you, NASCAR, are locked into what you already admitted. You can't walk it back now. On the other side, NASCAR fired back. They claim the plaintiffs admit they cannot recover damages for pre-October 2020 conduct. They argue, the plaintiffs' damages model fails because there were no overt acts in 2021, and the law bars plaintiffs' damages theory for 2022-2024. They go on. Plaintiffs identify no disputes of material fact that preclude summary judgment for NASCAR on other issues. And plaintiffs' opposition confirms they are not entitled to a jury trial on their Section 1 claim. Every word loaded. And here's where it gets even messier. The Drivers' Advisory Council, DAC, stepped into the chaos. Drivers, those who sit behind the wheel while this titanic battle rages around them, don't want to be collateral damage. The DAC asked to file a brief in the lawsuit. They warned, with the impending mediation, the DAC is concerned any potential agreement regarding the charter structure or revenue in the sport will impair the rights and interests of the drivers and threaten their overall security. Could you imagine being a driver watching executives fight over structure and money, then being told you might get screwed? That's what's happening. So what's really going on here? Think of it like this. 2311 and Front Row believe NASCAR is acting like the gatekeeper of an empire. They argue the relevant market, premier stock car racing, is theirs to defend, theirs to define. They want a narrower definition. NASCAR counters with, no, the market is broad. It includes other motorsports. That matters because in antitrust law, defining the relevant market can mean the difference between lawful conduct and monopoly behavior. If the market is narrow, NASCAR's power looks huge. If wide, it looks more normal. As the stakes grow, the deadline looms. Trial begins December 1st. But the crucial moment before then? Thursday morning session on summary judgment. The teams are arguing now for a ruling, not based on a full trial, but on legal arguments alone. Will Judge Bell grant it? The filings say NASCAR doesn't believe there are any facts in dispute that prevent summary judgment. The teams argue the opposite, pointing to NASCAR's own prior admissions. If the judge sides with one side, it could pull the plug on large portions of this case, or send the fight fully to trial. This is more than two teams versus the sanctioning body. It's structure versus challengers. It's drivers versus decision makers. It's money, power, and precedent colliding in a sport many thought was immune. The sport that gives us roar of engines and checkered flags now has a different kind of flag waving, the legal red flag. What happens if the mediation collapses? What if the settlement talks fail outright? Then December pulls the trigger, trial. But between now and then, there's potential for a settlement so seismic it reorders how teams participate, how charters are issued, how money flows, and maybe, for some drivers, how safe they feel. The DAC's warning resonates. Threaten their overall security. That phrase? That's drivers looking over their shoulder at a deal where they might lose ground. Behind the scenes, there's tension you won't see on television. Executives, attorneys, drivers, jersey-wearing fans. Everyone senses change. Mediators, courts, filings, they hide in the shadows of the spin and sparkle world of NASCAR. But make no mistake, the world they inhabit is shifting. And if a settlement shows up now, it won't be the neat kind. It will carry cracks. If they don't settle, then we enter full escalation mode. For fans tuned into the races, this might look like off-track noise. But for the teams, the money men, the charter holders, this is existential. For NASCAR, this is authority under fire. For the drivers, it's rights at risk. And for the sport, it might be the moment when business catches up with the roar of engines and complicates the dream. December 1st is coming fast. That's the date this all explodes in a courtroom if no settlement is reached. But don't let that calm exterior fool you. 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports, and NASCAR are already in a high-speed legal crash, and the brakes are off. The court is the new racetrack. But this time, instead of drafting lines and pit strategies, it's legal filings and market definitions. The difference? One misstep here doesn't cost you a race. It can cost you everything: revenue, influence, future control over how the sport is built. At the heart of it, 2311 and FRM are fighting to blow up how NASCAR handles its empire. They're not just suing for money, they want a new structure, a new way teams have power, a new say in how the billions in motorsports are controlled. They're pointing to NASCAR and saying, "You've built a monopoly." And now they're challenging the crown. And here's the kicker: NASCAR didn't flinch. Instead, they fired back with legal firepower. They said flat out, the teams can't win damages, not before October 2020, not in 2021, and quote, the law bars plaintiffs' damages theory for 2022-2024. Think about that. NASCAR is trying to wipe out every financial weapon 2311 and FRM brought into this battle. Like, okay, sue us, but you won't get paid. But the teams are holding the line. They've dug deep into NASCAR's own words, saying the sanctioning body admitted to the same market definition in their countersuit. That's like throwing a grenade into the courtroom. If true, NASCAR's entire defense could collapse on itself. One wrong word, one earlier filing, and boom, they're trapped by their own strategy. So why should fans care? Because what's on the table isn't just corporate legalese. It's the charter system. It's the rules that determine who gets a team, who keeps it, and how much it's worth. It's what could shape how drivers are signed, how sponsors invest, and how smaller teams survive. And now, the Drivers' Advisory Council, the voice of the people who actually risk their lives on the track, is begging to be heard. Jeff Burton's DAC submitted a brief to the court, pleading to be allowed into the fight. Their words? The DAC is concerned any potential agreement regarding the charter structure or revenue in the sport will impair the rights and interests of the drivers and threaten their overall security. That is not business as usual language. That's panic. This is the first time drivers have stepped up to say, wait, the suits are fighting, but we're the ones who could get hit in the crossfire. The DAC wants guarantees. They want a seat at the table before some backroom deal gets made that leaves them with less money, less leverage, or fewer rights. Let me put it plainly. This is no longer just about whether 2311 and FRM are mad. This is about whether the system NASCAR built can even survive the pressure being put on it. Because let's say this goes to trial. Let's say Judge Bell refuses to rule on the summary judgment Thursday. That means it's game on in December. And suddenly, every buried email, every clause in the charter system, every piece of hidden power, it's all dragged into the light. The teams are betting everything that NASCAR has too much control, that it's using its monopoly to keep teams in check, that the market isn't all motorsports, it's stock car racing, and NASCAR owns it all. That's how you prove an antitrust case. But NASCAR? They're doing the opposite. They're saying the sport is bigger than just stock cars, that there's competition from all angles, IndyCar, IMSA, Formula One. And if they can convince the court of that, then they're not a monopoly. Then the whole case could get thrown out. What's wild is what happens if 2311 and FRM win. Because then, NASCAR might be forced to change everything. How charters are handled, how new teams are added, how money is split. It could mean open access for more owners. It could mean less centralized control. It could shatter the old system and build something completely new. But that's if they win, and NASCAR will fight tooth and nail to make sure they don't. All this while the season barrels toward the finale. Martinsville, Phoenix, 2 races left. and behind the scenes, a legal war is being waged that could rewire the sport before the next green flag ever waves. So let me ask you this. Should NASCAR be allowed to keep total control over the sport it created? Or is it time for teams and drivers to take the wheel? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because no matter what side you're on, one thing is clear. This ain't over, not by a long shot.